It'll be all ready to go.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Hey. We got 2 are being covered. Hey, Miss Karen. Any murals over by... No, we have one. But any new murals, we're not going to do the side of the focus on.
I think you put something.
Test 1, 2. Shar, can you hear us online, Miss Shar? Got a couple.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Well, hey, we're going to kick off. Can you see okay? Can you see the... We'll show you the slides in a minute. Stephen, do you need me to share the slides so they can see online? Or can you do that when we get to there? Tell me. You want me to do it? So I'm going to yield my time to Mr. Bob Betzinger. He's going to give us the history in 40 minutes or less of the YMCA. No. So first quiz question. Can anybody name the gentleman that helped design, besides Bob, that helped design the YMCA? His last name starts with an M. Give you a couple seconds. Bob, do you remember? You told me the other day it was John Morrell. Right? So, yep, John Morrell. So, and that started, they actually came to Clinton, and him and his son, until they actually opened like a bakery or something later on, but they actually designed several buildings in the city. Of course, the Carnegie style, does anyone know the Carnegie style? Bob, what's so unique about the Carnegie style?
Greek revival.
Yeah, Greek revival, lots of great stones, last for years. Like what we say, like really good bones. So it's like the library, the old post office, and of course the YMCA. Does anybody know when the YMCA moved if you're not Greg? Does anybody remember? Moved out. Moved up to the Harding Elementary School, which is now the school admin building. 2008. Right? Does anybody know who owns the YMCA building now?
City of Clinton.
And does anybody know why the city of Clinton owns the YMCA building?
Taxes, property taxes.
Oh, yeah, it sounded like you came on the speaker. Property taxes, yes, sir. And what we do is, we normally don't do this, but we'll do it with smaller homes and smaller buildings, but we wait till it goes past the taxes need to be paid twice. There's two different openings when they have to pay taxes, and if they're not, then we'll actually do the tax certificate and gain that. And the reason we did that as a city, with the council and the mayor, we made a cognitive decision, is that we want to ensure this building stands until as long as it possibly can, okay? And we thought at the going rate, with the taxes not being paid and not the upkeep going on, that wouldn't happen, okay? So the next phase we did was we teamed with ECIA. Don's here with us tonight in the back. I'll introduce the other part of the gang. And we teamed with them to basically take a $250,000 loan. It's pretty much at really low percentage interest rate, I think 0. And the reason we're doing that is to abate the lead and to abate the asbestos that's in the YMCA. Our thought was, if we can do that, and then work with ECIA and work with these guys that are standing here that I can't introduce yet, almost. You guys are standing. Is that would be better for marketing to then attract developers to be able to want to come in and then start working, because you have to look at it this way. As you guys, many of you probably know, the asbestos and lead hangs out in the ceiling tiles and in the floor space, right? So once you take the ceilings out, once you take the floor covering off, you basically have a really sturdy shell of a turn of the century, 1900, 1905, building that was built very well. So we want to make sure the roof was secured. Prior to doing that, though, too, Miss Tammy, who's over there on the side, she actually went in, sent contractors in, and we cleared everything out. And then we did inspections to see where we were with the building. Raise your hand if you've actually been inside the building. Oh, Bob, you have to leave. You've never been in there?
I was going to tell you, the guy that built it was a well-known, he built a lot of buildings around town.
Yes, sir.
John Lakin's son. One other thing, I'll shut up. And we had our own brickyard here in town. It was called the Iowa Granite Brick. Now,
Both of you worked there?
Now, there's a source of this if we need them in the restoration.
Gotcha. So for those online, what Bob Betzinger said, he's actually holding an IGB,
Iowa Granite Brick. It was
Iowa Granite Brick.
Chancey Lamb built his own brickyard for the YMCA, but I really wanted to say, if we need, there's, okay.
Yep. If we need some stonework, there's places we can go to get stone.
In the restoration, but the Evans Drugstore in Northern Cities is made out of that brick. And they're usually 2 or 3 layers thick, and the interior walls just come out of the Roosevelt, the school, what was the name of Franklin School. All the inside bricks just like to come out of the
Gotcha.
Iowa Granite Brick, right here in Clinton.
Right here in Clinton, Iowa. So those online, what Bob was saying is basically the granite was made here, the IGB, and if we need to look at that for the structure thing. We also had Terracon come in do another part that we're going to have these guys we'll talk about a little bit, but where the U.S. Bank sits, you guys might know there used to be what there? Miss Connie, remember? A gas station?
It was a gas station.
Yes.
It was before me.
Oh, it was before, oh,
I'm
no.
not that old.
No, I thought U.S. Bank was only a couple years old. I didn't think it was that old.
Oh, no.
Okay. So there was a gas station. What time period would have that been?
It would have been in the 50s and 60s.
56.
It
So,
goes back to the 30s, Wallace McCullough.
right in the 30s. So we had Terracon come, and the dental office probably wasn't happy that day, but it wasn't too bad. But they basically did some right across from Corner Deli. Did you hear it all? Right there on, I think it was the 25th of January, actually. I said, make sure you go see the dentist, please. But they drilled in there, but they were digging down to make sure there was no seepage that might have come over from that gas station there. And then they did, I think on the west side, they did a couple spots, and I think there was 2 other spots, one on the west, one on the south, just to make sure that everything under the ground was good too, because when we go to market this, we don't want to have any surprises for that. So getting it cleaned out, getting the asbestos and lead removed, leveraging ECIA. Somebody's got their type. Oh, Char's typing. We can hear you typing, Char. You're okay. Hey, you're a good typist. Yes. So what I'm going to do is, without further ado, we'll have plenty of time for questions, but we actually have a really good crew here, led by Chris from ECIA. He's actually a world-renowned planner because he hails from Iowa State. And we also have Lisa from YTT out of Cedar Rapids, engineer. And I'm going to turn the con over there, but we have plenty of time. I want to have them go through their presentation, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. We got a little thing we're going to practice or go through, a little, I would say practical. We're going to go through a little SWOT analysis. So with that, I'm going to give you the con. Sir, you want to put it right here. You should just put that on your belt like that. Ready to go. Yeah.
So, as Matt mentioned, there's really 4 of us that aren't part of the city of Clinton that are working on this project. Got Dawn Danielson as program manager. Myself, I'm an urban planner, and then we have Lisa. She's working on the design, and that's also some of the environmental stuff, but also Dawn's working on some of that as well. So there's a lot of people working on this project. And there's a lot of aspects that hope to cover here that we hope help you guys form a good picture for what should go next and how the YMCA should adapt to the needs of now. So let's hit the next slide. So we're kind of do a few things here today. So Matt just provided the site background. I'm going to go through the survey results. Then we'll do a discussion of the site assessment, the work completed so far, the phase 1, the phase 2, the overview of just kind of the general planning process. Because at the end of this process, we're going to produce an actual document, a site reuse plan. And so that's hopefully should be able to guide you guys and to give you a few options. Lisa's team will kind of work on giving you guys a few options, few design concepts that can be, generally it's a democratic process that this works through. So all this information that you're giving us here tonight, it's not just going to be us talking to you. I promise we're going to give you guys an opportunity to talk. But we're hopefully get all that information, get hopefully a unified vision in some degree. And everyone isn't going to agree on everything, but hopefully a good unified vision on what generally should be on the site, and then that can be packaged up and then marketed to a developer. So that is kind of how this process kind of loosely works, or at least in this instance. So. And after I go over kind of the contents of the plan and what you guys should expect and look out for, we'll do a Q&A. These guys will fire at us as you like. And then we're going to do a small group exercise. We're going to be taking a SWOT analysis, break you guys up into a few groups. You guys can talk about, a few of the aspects of the site, things you don't like, things you do like, things you think are really important assets to this site, and maybe we have overlooked something, and that sort of local feedback is really helpful for us. So that's kind of the agenda for tonight, and you're going to hit the next one, and then the next one. So I'll just grab slides. So I'll just keep going a little bit here. So is there technical issues?
Oh, sure.
No, you're all right. I think we have some technical issues. Okay. There we go. All right. So these are the survey questions. We gave a community-wide survey. We got about, a really good response rate for these sorts of surveys. A little bit more, close to 500 responses on these. You'll notice that in a few of the questions, they don't add up to 100%, or there's more respondents than I just said right there. That's because people can choose answers twice, so it's not out of 100%. And there's a lot of questions. People could check all that apply. So I'm not trying to pull a fast one on you guys. That's just how the numbers are. So, for example, like this one, it's more than 100% because people could choose two answers. Anyways, without that disclaimer. So what elements do you believe should be included in the design for the YMCA? Most people, there's a few at the top that people really liked. And so a lot of people said they want to see small businesses. A lot of people said housing, which is an important one to hold on to because we got kind of mixed results in the end of this survey on a different question. So a lot of people said they want housing in this particular question. A lot of people want to see retail, amenities. A lot of people want to see nonprofit space, which I thought was interesting. And there's a little few office space, restaurants. A lot of people want to see restaurants. Restaurants are a really great asset to a lot of towns. It improves, quality of life. It gives, tourists, something to come in and do. And, a lot of people are more like food tourists these days. So, these are kind of interesting things to note. And then municipal, got the low score there, so I don't think we'd be too worried about that. And then there's a few interesting cases, things that people have mentioned. Off the top of my head, marijuana dispensary came up. A few interesting ones. Microbrewery, which actually can be in the spot, I believe, according to that the overlay district. So there's a variety of interesting things that can happen on this parcel. And this would be a good opportunity for me to talk about the zoning of the area. May or may not be aware that it is a special overlay district within the central business district. And this allows for a lot of uses. You could have housing, all these things up here that I've listed you could have, and that's, not even the full extent. So really, it only excludes fairly high intense uses like a quarry or something, but I don't think we have to worry about that.
Can I raise something in here? We did not get a survey at our house, and my husband has one for other there that might be a zoning thing too. If you'd like to mention it. Just see as a question.
Sure, yeah, we'll get right to the Q&A, and you guys can talk, and we'll write down all that feedback, and it'll go right in the plan. So
did a lot of households get a survey? Because we didn't get one.
So we did a few outreach methods. First of all, we kind of gave a press release. We used the emergency response system? I'm not sure, but that kind of gave everyone the text message, so it got everyone downtown. Okay. So there was a variety of outreach methods, and you can still actually take the survey. So this is just the preliminary data, and we will, if you want to leave your information with us, we'll get you a hard copy or something like that, and we can do that. So.
Hey Chris, if you could just share with me the survey in Dubuque, how many they had reply versus how many we had.
Yeah, and that's really important. So we did, the same exact process for a site in Dubuque, and we got probably only 142 responses. So Clinton has a lot of, you guys are really engaged, and so that's really important. So far, we're like almost 500. So and it's been going up every time I look at it. So and it usually goes up again. So yeah, if you want to hit the next slide. This is a similar question, but it's a little bit more focused on if this were to be used for commercial use, what sort of businesses will we like to see? There's a few that have a good amount here. We had, again, the same suspects. We had restaurants and bars. We had entertainment, retail. So people want more amenities, and that, we understand that. That's, something that really adds a lot of character, improves quality of life, and all that sort of thing. You can hit the next one. So here's the housing one. This was the interesting bit. So in the beginning, everyone said that they want to see housing on the site, and in this one you can see that 37% of the pie is no housing. So interesting that people kind of swapped around on that, but there still is a very large amount of people that do want some variety of housing, and more than that 37%. They're just not all in agreement about what sort of housing could be there. The structure itself does lend the historic eastern side that you guys have hopefully a picture of. That does lend itself well to housing. And so I'm not going to try to steer you guys any one way or another. This is about you kind of talking to me once I'm done talking at you. But it does lend itself well to housing in its nature. So we have, and I was just kind of talk about it. We do have also apartments as kind of the biggest subsection. We had, a lot of people want mixed use, and that's really interesting because the site is actually really perfect for mixed use. On the top floors and stuff, it's very kind of compartmentalized, and it really would convert well to apartments. And then on the ground floor, I believe due to the zoning regulation, there needs to, I think, there's commercial could be on the bottom very well. So that's really, that's good. A lot of people want to see mixed use. That works really well there. But there's a lot of other options, so if there's a will. So you can hit the next one. So do you have any concerns regarding the YMCA site? A good chunk of people didn't have any concerns. But there were a lot of people that had a concern about parking and safety overwhelmingly. and this is a big problem with a lot of brownfields and stuff. Not parking, but safety. Safety and crime is one of the big reasons why these are liabilities to the town. And ultimately, if someone gets hurt on that property, if something's stolen from that property, that's essentially taxpayer dollars that's being, taken there. Or you got to send cops out to respond to something, taxpayer dollars again. So those are kind of things to kind of think about when a lot of people want to not do anything with the structure or just want to keep hands off. My role as a planner is at least I'm not going to tell you what's right for your community, but I at least want to give you guys the pros and the cons and keep the options open. So Matt talked a little bit about why you guys have the property and stuff like that. So now it's important that we find the best and highest use of it. It's sitting, delinquent. It could sit delinquent for several years, another 10 years, if the city didn't want to, take this initiative to get, the environmental stuff, figured out. Generally, the market, private investors, they don't want to take that kind of gamble on a property. And so it's really important that that the city kind of throws in and and at least kind of brings it up to par, so then the private market can kind of find its uses and and not have to wonder if they're getting into some sort of hazardous quicksand. And the bigger picture is that Clinton is competing against all the other cities in the area. You're competing against Dubuque. You're competing against the Quad cities, which on all that stuff. So they are all well, they're all utilizing these same tools, and so the free market, is maybe not quite apparent here. And so they're using these tools to kind of fix their properties, and and these are just what it is for a city to compete in the modern era. And so that's just kind of all I'll leave you guys with on that. And it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind when you're wondering, why did they have this, property? Why is government money touching it at all? So you can roll to the next one. Sure.
Okay, so when I look at the Y, we have the old Y, and then we have the new Y.
Mm-hmm.
So are you talking about two different sections or as a whole?
Yeah,
Both.
Yeah, well, once.
Both.
Okay, because the newer section is totally different.
Right. And so once I'm done with the survey stuff, we have some pictures, and we'll kind of talk about the different portions that we're referencing a few times in here. And I think so. If you want to go to the next one, and so again, these were the most. This one wasn't one that I could tabulate. It was just comments, but these were by far the most popular infrastructure, streetscape improvements people wanted to see: landscaping, lighting, parking, cleanliness, roads, sidewalks. So these are fairly common things that people want. These are things that people should probably have for a nice, successful downtown. So these are the good things to consider. You can go forward. And so here's what we're kind of talking about, the different portions. I believe if you go to page, or did everyone grab a map when they?
We're sharing one that we look at.
So if you grab, so when I refer to the eastern portion, I'm talking about the historic, part of it, and the western portion is the one that was built circa 1960. So.
Not all of it.
Not all.
Not all
That's
of
why
it.
we came here.
There's two parts.
Some was in the 70s,
Yeah.
80s. That's
West,
right.
cement part, built in 1979, 80.
Okay. So it was all kind of built in that ballpark, but they're two distinct, they're 80 years of difference, about between each of those.
Amazing how the stone changed all those years later.
Right. So most people said that they wanted both structures retained and renovated. This is kind of an interesting, thought, but that's fine. A lot of people said that. Then we had a lot of people saying that both wanted them, that both sides be demolished. So kind of polarized opinions on this particular question. They're either let's take them down or let's keep them both up. The one thing to keep in mind, and which Dawn will talk a little bit about at the end of this presentation is about the SHPO. It may not be that we can just knock down the historic eastern portion. That might not happen. That's due to Iowa regulations. This may be considered a historical site, and so we can't just start swinging the wrecking ball. So that's why the city has kind of taken the initiative to kind of figure out how can we adaptively reuse what is nice, which is a very nice building. It has great bones, and it adds character. If you start knocking down everything in a town from the history, you lose out on kind of what makes Clinton unique. You start looking like everywhere USA, with your McDonald's and strip malls. So, it's just something to keep in mind. And then, you had a few other people that said they want to just, retain the historic eastern section and demolish the newer west wing, which may be, is a potential outcome. So we'll go next. And so if the west portion, emphasis on if, the west portion is demolished, what do you believe should be constructed in its place? By far, most people said green space, which was interesting. So, that is certainly, a possibility. We certainly can, draw up, a concept that includes more green space. But there was a great number of people that want small business and housing and, something that is income generative. So that's something, to keep in mind. And again, the survey is still open, so if, you don't feel that your opinions are represented here, feel free to take that survey. And hit the next one, please. All right, so here's the last stats I'll throw at you. So how would you like the redevelopment to impact your community? Well, improving quality of life by far, and then reducing crime. So this process, should be able to do both of those. And so we will hopefully get, even more feedback tonight, and, really figure out, what are the priorities? How can we create this and box this up, bow it up into a nice package, and then hand to the developers and give them a blank slate of, a site. And, I think, that should be, lead to some really nice results for you guys. So now I think I'll be handing it over to, well, click to the next slide. Lisa, you can take the timeline slide.
Okay, so here we are looking at the redevelopment timeline. Some of the work has already been completed. Terracon's been working on this site for a while. So we were telling you they've done a lot of the preliminary work already. So we've got phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments have already been taken care of. And here we are now in our public outreach phase in the February to March era. We're having we've already had, I think there was another meeting earlier. There were some other input meetings for this site. So there have been some other input meetings. We've had a community survey go out. When was that other meeting?
Wasn't it the annex?
What? We had them at the downtown,
The downtown.
And they were like last month, right? Were they? Yeah.
And the survey went out.
And the survey went out in February too. So a lot of input's been gathered already. So we're here to even get some more tonight. So following the meeting tonight, we're going to take all this data and start working on reuse planning and options for the site. So going into April, we're going to start working on the draft reuse plan. Our goal is to have, by the end of April, to have a draft plan completed to get back in front of you guys to take a look at. Then following up in May of this year, we're going to be presenting the reuse/revisioning plan to the City Council. The cleanup plan, the ABCA, the QAPP, and other documents are going to be submitted to the EPA for approval, and the site report is going to be sent to Iowa, the SHPO, for the historic preservation. The ABCA and the cleanup plan are related to the asbestos and the other cleanup activities that have to go on, not the demo or anything at this point. Then following up in August, we are going to be starting the cleanup implementation, and then goal is by December to have the site ready for reuse. Now I'm going to talk a little bit. So the site here is, it's about a 300 by 140 foot site. Yep, 300 by 140. It's just shy of an acre. So when we talk about the eastern side, we're talking about the historic portion. That's the part over here. When we talk about the western side, we are talking about the newer part that was 60s, 70s era. So as we've already said, we're pretty sure the eastern side is going to come back as historic, so it probably isn't going anywhere. We're going to have to reuse it to be determined on the other side, though. So we're not sure how that's going to work out. So overall, just shy of an acre in downtown Clinton that we're going to find some great reuses for. So this is a really exciting project. It's a rather large property, so you have a lot of options for. When we keep talking about brownfields, I'll give you a little either way. I'll go for it. So just to give you guys a little background on what a brownfield actually is. Technical definition is basically a property that's complicated by the presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. Brownfields, and that can be all sorts of things. It can be asbestos, it can be petroleum, it can be all sorts of other items. In this site, we're dealing with asbestos and lead. Those are the two identified ones. But it can be all sorts of other contaminants depending on what site we're at. And brownfields are generally abandoned, underused properties or vacant land. And they're generally not a positive thing for a community, so we like to redevelop them. So just to go for a little background on things we do, we've already done environmental site assessment looking for the unknown contaminants, and you move on to an environmental cleanup, and then the site is ready for redevelopment. So when we're done with our process here, you guys will have a site that is ready for redevelopment. So following up on the YMCA site, it's been vacant. It hasn't been utilized or properly utilized for over 12 years. We understand people were using it somewhat during that time. Yeah, the east side. But in general, it's been a long time since it's been fully functioning at its best capacity. It currently is a liability and high maintenance to the city. There are issues with safety and vandalism, among other things going on. So it's definitely a property that needs to be addressed, and some crime, vandalism going on. So things that this is going to help the city, it's going to be a great benefit once this project's cleaned up. We're going to take away the barriers for redevelopment. So when we're done helping you guys get through this process, you are going to be able to market this to developers and actually get this property functioning and serving the city and providing an asset to the city. The city has already obtained the EPA grants for the environmental assessment and the planning work, so that's already underway. City has already obtained funding for the asbestos abatement cleanup, 10-year loan, 0%, so that's already underway. And planning for this project is going to help us give a unified vision for the site that's going to be marketed to a developer. Okay. Don wants to do this one.
You guys are pretty good for not rehearsing, changing the mic.
Yeah, that's it. Don't jinx me.
Go as high as you can so Charlotte can hear you.
All right. Everybody hear me okay? So just to give you a little update on the site, we talked a lot about the contamination of the site and it being a brownfield. I will say I've been working brownfields, that particular program, for about 2.5 years. And sometimes when you say just brownfield, I think people get scared and they think gas station, dry cleaner, massive contaminated site. It doesn't have to be that serious of a site. It's just a site that there is potentially some contaminant of some sort that has hindered the site from being developed. And like they mentioned, asbestos and lead are the big ones here. So Terracon came in and they did a phase 1. They completed that back in last August. And when they do a phase one, they look at the history of the property, what's happened on the site, and then the neighborhood. And they identified a gas station was, as Matt had indicated, kitty corner to the property, the northeast corner, from like 1950 to 1967. So there is a potential. Those gas stations back then, they weren't regulated like they are today. So when they pull out the tanks and that's no longer a gas station, there could have been a leaking gas tank under there or something that would have gotten into the soil, and then it could have contaminated the YMCA site, which a potential developer would want to know before they would purchase the property if it has any contamination to that extent. So we, like Matt indicated, had Terracon come in, and they did 3 boring drillings around the perimeter of the property, and those drillings, the samplings showed they hit bedrock. It was very shallow bedrock. There was no contamination in, they weren't able to really get to groundwater. But the contamination they did find lead in the soil, which is a naturally occurring substance that you can find all over Iowa. The Iowa statewide standard for lead is 400 milligrams per kilogram, and at this site it was at 454. So it was just slightly elevated. So what I did was I took the phase 1 and the phase 2 and I sent it off to the Iowa DNR, which is our regulator here in Iowa, and had them look at both documents. And they provided back a letter to the city and to us that basically said, at that level, there's nothing that they're really concerned about because it is a naturally occurring substance in the soil. So they didn't recommend any additional further testing in regards to the soil around the property. Then the phase 1 indicated we probably should have an asbestos and lead inspection done on the building structure, given the age. The materials probably has asbestos and lead in it. It came back that there is asbestos and lead above the state standard in the building. And if anybody is interested in seeing pictures, I have pictures of all the asbestos contamination that was sampled throughout the building, so you can kind of see where they identified the asbestos material. So feel free to, afterwards or towards the end, come up and look at it. I also have a breakdown of all the areas within both buildings that have the asbestos and lead. So because it is above state standards, the property, before it can be developed, before it can be renovated at all, that has to be abated for the asbestos. Now lead, if you're not touching it, it can stay in its place. And if you're going to completely demolish the one building, then you don't have to necessarily worry about removing the lead prior to that demolition. But if you're going to renovate a building, then you have to ensure that the removal of the lead along with asbestos is done appropriately prior to that renovation. So the city, as Matt indicated, they applied for, with ECIA, a line of credit for up to $250,000 to assist them in cleaning up that contamination in the building, removing any asbestos and lead, and getting that site ready for reuse. There is a forgivable portion, so depending on how much the city puts in, we'll match and we'll forgive a portion of that loan. So hopefully the dollar amount at the end will be a lower amount, and hopefully that could be offset down the road with either it becoming an income-producing property or the sale of the property. The loan is it's a 10-year term. It's the first 3 years are actually 0% interest, and then it just tiers up slightly thereafter. So it's a very affordable loan product for the city, is how that's drafted. And then the other things with the requirements with the loan program through EPA is they require an actual cleanup plan, which is the asbestos abatement plan, which just says, how are you going to remove that lead? How are you going to get that out of that building safely? And it's just a guideline for anybody that's a contractor that will come in and actually clean out the asbestos and lead that's located in the property. EPA, since they're funding this, they also say, well, we don't want you to just go one path. We want to make sure you cover all your bases and check out all the paths that you should potentially do. So they have us do what's called an analysis to look at alternatives. Do you do nothing? Is that the right path? Do you abate? Do you take down the buildings completely? They just have you look at those various paths and see what's the best route to go and kind of do an analysis. So that will be these 2 steps. This one's in process. We have a draft right now from Terracon, and this one Terracon is working on. We hope to have by the end of the month. And then we'll come back and we'll actually have another public meeting to kind of go over those plans briefly with the public in case anybody's interested in learning more about that process and what was decided. We'll have that as well. And EPA and Iowa DNR may be here at that time to help facilitate that conversation. So if we didn't throw too much at you tonight and you're really, really wanting to know more about this site and everything that's going on, we have created, Lisa Frederick here with the city did an excellent job of creating a website that's out on the webpage that's located right here in the city of Clinton. And you can actually learn more about all the stuff that I've talked about tonight. You can see the phase 1, the phase 2, the plans. We're putting everything out there so you can view it all. So you'll have an opportunity to provide us comments or any suggestions you have, green sustainability that you want. You can provide those comments as well for us to take into consideration in the cleanup process. So.
Can you email that stuff too if you don't have a computer?
Well, I'll tell you what.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, one of those documents is probably hundreds of pages.
Okay, so we have to
So,
come here to look at it.
yeah, you could go, we have it at the library that you can access it there on a computer as well. So if you don't have.
a computer.
No, the library.
Nope, the library. Yeah, if you go to the library, you can access it.
Okay.
They won't charge you a thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't look at a computer, so my husband or daughter would have to help me.
Yeah, that would probably be the best because if you're printing it, it's a lot of paper to print out just one of the documents. So as far as the paper on that. So one thing earlier on they mentioned about survey, giving your feedback. On the agenda tonight is actually a QR code. If you have a phone, you can actually use that code to that's all right. We will make sure we get to the cities some paper copies, and you can complete it that way. But we'll have the survey open probably a week or 2 beyond this meeting, just so we can gather anybody who hasn't had a chance to fill out the survey's input.
So we'll just have to get it here.
Yeah, we'll give you a
Correct. So we'll make sure you have that opportunity to do that because we want to hear everybody's suggestions and ideas as far as what they want to see with the site. So
How long would you like to accept?
Survey?
Survey.
Well,
Otherwise, we'll have to do it tonight.
2 more weeks probably 2 more weeks is probably about, we gotta, incorporate all this into our plan, so there has to be a cutoff somewhere.
Yeah, we can work with you because we can get you to the library and have somebody help you do it. Or give you a hard copy. But then the hard copy we'll give to you. We'll make sure you get it.
Otherwise, we'll just give our opinions tonight.
Certainly.
yeah, we can capture your thoughts and opinions tonight too as well.
We'll just
So
do it tonight.
yeah, so.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Yeah, and then besides all the environmental assessment, it was mentioned that SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Office, we're working with them also on this site. And the older building that was built like circa 1905, SHPO, our Iowa SHPO is very good in that they don't like to see historic buildings taken down. They want to see those maintained and kept in their glory so that they look beautiful for the community and they're still productive properties. So when it comes to removing of the asbestos and lead, there's some things that will have to be removed, but we'll have to work very closely with SHPO to determine, okay, do we have to remove the lead around the windows? And they may say, no, we don't want you to touch those because of the historic nature. So we'll work with them to determine what can truly be removed and what has to be maintained as far as the structures go.
Speaking of asbestos, it's actually a natural mineral, magnesium silicate. It's when it gets ground up and processed into things, but it could be in mortar, it could be in plaster, if the materials were ground up.
Yeah.
That would make it, it's in a solid state in a building, you start wrecking and making all that stuff, dust that, and that's why it's better to save than try to clear it down.
Right, and the dust is one thing that we try to have like a management plan of how you handle that for people who are working in that building and doing that demolition renovation, because you don't want them being exposed to that contamination.
I mean, it
So,
could be in that brick, but it's in a solid state, and all of a sudden they'll
Yeah.
pop it up and grind it up.
yeah, yep. So, you know, again, we work with SHPO and EPA to ensure that everything is handled properly to minimize the contamination that would be in the air as a result of the asbestos removal.
It'd be
So.
more expensive to brick it than renovate it. Would be better.
Yeah, it can be. We're working on another property in another community that actually the entire property, unfortunately, has been deemed structurally unsafe. So both structures have to come down, and because it has asbestos in it above state level, it has to be what's called a rack and demolition. Everything has to be basically wrapped up as if it's contaminated and taken to a place that would take that hazardous material, which is a shame, you know, that
We were going to try to reuse the
yeah. Yeah, we were hoping we could have for the community reused it, but unfortunately we can't in that scenario. So that hasn't happened in this scenario. So that's the importance of getting to these buildings before they get to that point. You know, you have several buildings in your downtown area, and some of them maybe have been vacant and such. And if you let them get to the point where you can't do anything with them, you can't renovate them, then unfortunately you end up in that scenario where everything ends up going to hazardous waste.
I remember when the curtain in the theater was made out of asbestos.
Yeah. To be quite honest, there are asbestos still in today, and like this newer building, I mean newer facilities even have asbestos. There's still concentrations. They've limited what you can use and things, but you do find it in a lot of things still yet today. So.
All right. Can everyone hear me all right? At least well, I know you guys can, but can audio hear me all right? All right. So the last thing I want to talk about was the components of the site reuse plan. This is going to be ultimately the final product, the deliverable that we'll give you. I mean, there'll be some other, as Dawn mentioned, some EPA-related, documents, which you could go to the library and you could sift through those if you want. But we'll kind of try to consolidate all this information down into a public-facing document. And so the first kind of chapter that we'll talk about kind of the research on existing city documents and site history. So we'll talk a little bit about the history that Matt talked about. We'll talk about the zoning of the area. We'll talk about the comprehensive plan, and we'll also talk about the downtown master plan. Those are all community plans that have been made before, and this plan will only fit within those, under their framework. So this isn't, maybe, if some people feel that just a quick survey and a few public meetings isn't enough public input. We have to understand that this public input goes back, I believe 10 years. I think was when the 2010 comprehensive plan happened, and then there was the whole downtown master plan. And so it is a lot. It's, we hopefully will get a good, sample of people that will be, talking or getting their opinion on this process. So we'll talk about, kind of give an analysis of opportunities and constraints. One of my jobs is, again, as a planner, is that you really understand what is actually possible. We want to leave it a good framework for you guys to do, as have as many ideas and really be creative, I guess, with how this site could be reused. But we also don't want to say, oh, let's put the new Disneyland theme park in downtown and put that in our plan. That's not a useful public-facing document because it can't actually be acted on. So that's something that's important to me and most planners. So, and we're also going to do an economic assessment. We'll include all of our environmental due diligence, as Don kind of mentioned. An infrastructure plan. This is a catalyst site, So we got to talk a little bit about the surrounding infrastructure. We're probably not going to focus fairly in depth in the infrastructure because you guys did a really excellent downtown master plan just a year or two ago, and that really covers those topics in depth. And then we'll include your community feedback. Everything you guys say to us here tonight, will probably be will be included in every bit of the plan. So that's important to keep in mind. And then Lisa's team will also design some best use concepts. So if there's a lot of ideas that people have that maybe are conflicting, we'll draw them all up, and we'll see if you guys can kind of figure out how you want to act on that. And then implementation. So how do we actually get some of this stuff done? So that's kind of all the bits that are to a site reuse plan, and that is it for the presentation. Maybe I should wear this because now we might be doing the. I know.
We only do this because when we get into question and answer, then I'll let them speak, and then we'll get them on tape, and then you guys can answer those. So, we're going to do the group thing first. Do you want to do that? Let's just see. Let's just throw it out. See what questions we have, just for fun. Who's got the first question? You way in the back. Ladies and gentlemen, first question, Greg Oben. Sir.
So this is like a design question. We're talking about the east portion and the west portion, but we do know that there was like a central portion. Can the westernmost portion be demolished and the central portion be saved and the east portion be saved as another possible alternative to design going forward?
And I would jump in before I give it to Lisa, but as we've looked at this, is you could have a multitude of things. So we could have the east and central stay, we could have the east and central and west stay. So I think that's all going to come out of this as they start to do their design and for that. But and really what we want to do as we go around and get more questions is, as you look at this, we know in our hearts we're thinking just like Bob Betzinger. What would Bob Betzinger want to do with this building if he had $10 million? He'd want to keep it, okay? But also we know is we have to be realistic because we have to find that developer with that $10 million or $8 million to then redevelop it. Because we could have all the pie in sky ideas that we want and take all the best and the brightest things that you guys give us tonight. But if we can't find that developer to come in here to do that, then we don't know. I think the biggest thing that the council is going to need as we get all this feedback put back to them is what is the best reuse? What is the most feasible way to market this to then get a developer to come in? And we probably want to be flexible. Because if we get a developer that comes and knocks on the door tomorrow, I'll bring them right to the council and say, hey, they want to keep the east and central, but they don't want to keep the west. What say you, good council, right? Or they come in and say, we just want to keep the east, but not the central and west. What say you? And this is one of those times that we're going to have to take a look at ourselves. I'm disappointed Disneyland won't come from Chris. But really look at ourselves and say, how can we get this best prepared to then have this ready for a developer to save this? Because the ultimate goal here is to have that 1905 structure remain. If we can have the others, that's extra benefit. But we don't want that to go anywhere. That's why the city in the first place and the council moved to take this building and take possession of it so we can actually save it, because it does have a lot of meaning to us. We have, Michael Carney probably correct me, but we have over 17 structures throughout that fall in the historical category. This is one of them that are on the National Register when I'm talking about downtown, just not other houses. So we have a lot of history. We got the right number? Oh, Bob, I thought Bob had the right number. So anyway, we want to keep this going, and as Chris mentioned too, probably more importantly is, this has been here since 1905, so it's a unique piece that most communities don't have, and we want to be able to be unique, and we want people to live and work and play in Clinton. And the other thing you guys probably know too, just working with Karen in the downtown is, it's really tough in 2022 to define and survive as a downtown, because we don't have Sears or Klein's or Van Mauer or J.C. Penney's because they've moved out west or moved away. So what we've really taken a really focused view on, working with Karen and her team, is the more people that you have living that work in Clinton in the downtown, what then happens? More traffic. And once a famous person once told me, her name was anonymous, cars don't pay, right? So it's the people that come out of their apartments with their purses and wallets that then we'd have other shops. We'd see Corner Deli completely full, right? Because we're going to have, this is Matt's version. Once the Wilson building's done, that's 33 rooms, and let's say everybody has a significant other. That's 66 people that are living across from Corner Deli that could have a chance to go to her establishment to eat. We're working on the Lafayette to finish, which has 52 apartments, and let's just take it times 2 for tonight. That's 104 people that are now in the downtown that are going to now want to go to the cupcake place or to a new restaurant or a new brew pub that we're working on, right? So we also see this, and I'm not leaning you one way or the other, but we also see this could be a really great opportunity for some really high-end, luxurious apartments, for example, in this. And we've even had ideas that we've discussed as maybe part of this is inside parking. Because where can you park inside in downtown? Can't. So I'm of that age, my wife and I look at retirement, not yet, but around the corner. What better place to live in a downtown that's vibrant, be able to park your car inside, you don't have to worry about the snow, you don't have to shovel anything because it's an apartment. And then put some amenities that are in there that, a little workout place, since it used to be the Y, we should have that. But then also, one of the biggest things we're going to have, whatever it ends up being is, we're going to cover the walls with whatever developer and make sure that they have all the history behind that. So we're going to have a picture of Mr. Metzger in there working, like what, 1985?
Going to Jeff here, would you please?
Yes, ma'am.
Because he's going with what he says, and I think it will go
Sure.
all together.
I'll hold for you.
Could you, and
I
please
would-
show that screen that talks about safety on there.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I worked at the Y from 1976 to 89, and I was wondering if they could put like a fallout shelter where the new part is.
Fallout shelter?
Yeah.
Because our daughter went to
I wanna-
Northeast
I wanna say some
School,
more.
and they got a good fallout shelter, and we kept on saying how it'd be good if the community of Clinton had something like that going.
Can I go up there by the?
Sure, go ahead. Come on.
There's a lot
Just
of
to get back to the
things.
Yeah,
picture,
which
please.
picture do you want? Yeah.
The one with the building.
Oh, okay, then we'll go,
Okay.
then talk about safety.
This part here and this part here was all built in 1979 to 80. And this part here is just about all cement. Just the windows are not cement.
Yep.
And it goes way down in the ground.
Yep, it's got 2 swimming pools. You got a
Yeah,
swimming
you
pool
got-
here and a swimming
you
pool
got-
running that way.
We got one here,
Yep.
the swimming pool's over here in this one. And then the other one's over there.
Yep.
They got 2 basketball courts in that building. They got the big gym. They got, what is it? 1, 2. They got the weight room back in here, and they have 2 locker rooms in there. And here's the hallway that goes between the buildings.
Yep.
But down in the basement, there's a lot, that goes way down into the basement. It goes down in the ground. Under the ground, yeah.
Probably where all the copper they took from.
When I worked there, I used to go down in there. And they get the filters, the swimming pool filters, everything down there. From this pool over here.
Was it a fallout shelter at that time? Was it
No.
I don't think it's been a
never
fault.
been a fallout shelter. That was, this was all parking lot here at one time. And then back on the back side was all lawn. That's why I worked there from 76 to 89. That was built in 80, 79 and 80. That part there and this hallway here, put up in 79 and 80.
Thank you, Mr. Jeff.
And you had that chart that said people were concerned about safety too, that maybe that would go hand in hand, that people would be interested.
The central
in that.
portion, I believe, was completed in 1961.
If people could see go to Northeast School and see how they did their fallout shelter, it'd be kind of good. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. That's my fault. I handed Mike. I thought you were having a sidebar. Mr. Mike, are you talking about this area or this?
The brick part.
This right here?
Everything from the 1906 building over to the old concrete.
Oh, all the way over to here?
Yeah.
Gotcha. This is the central.
And that has 1 pool, and it was completed, I believe, in 1961.
Gotcha. Was that the cold pool or hot pool? Since you have two different type of pools?
Very good point. Yeah, the reason they had two pools is because one pool was used for swimming lessons for the oldsters.
Yep. Little warmer for them.
Yeah, and the other pool
Competitive.
was for the lap
Yep.
swimmers because
You're going to be sweating.
one of the problems with the YW for lap swimmers is you get hypothermia.
Yep.
between-
Gotcha. Oh, go ahead online first. We'll give a break. Go ahead online. Is that Shar?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. Dennis Lauber.
Mr. Lover?
No, that's my dad. So I've got a party based in Kansas City that is interested in I've got a process question. They're interested in the historic eastern portion, and I'm currently in Kansas right now, but there may be people in the room that were interested in the western portion. Are you going to do a RFP, or is something you just said in your comments? Are you ready now to receive proposals?
No, so like the note I sent you the other day, so the plan is just like we did with 315 and 317 to 327 North 2nd Street Strand. We're going to do a request for proposal for bids. We will put it out as a package. We'll allow them, if they want to, we can break it up into components, that's fine. We would like to just we prefer just one developer, but if we have, lots of people coming in, but it would be the same process, and how it works is it goes out, request for proposal. It has 30 days for all bids to come back in. We'll work with the council to set up the measures, meaning what are we looking for a bottom drawer asking price? What are we looking for as far as price of improvements? And then what are we looking for at end state for that? Along with the things that are coming from the survey and from your guys' comments of like, what do we want to have as a reuse in that building? So that'll all be taken into consideration, where at the end of the day, the council will have the first right of refusal and the first right of selection on making sure that it fits the mold that what they want to be able to use it. Does that answer your question, Dennis?
Well, thank you. That's what I was thinking, but then when you were talking a few minutes ago, you made a comment about, if a person's got a proposal, go ahead and submit it. So what I'm hearing you is wait until the RFP is issued.
Yeah, I think on the proposal side, it'd be more as like what would be for reuse, not necessarily a developer proposing to come in, because we have to follow proper procedure. This is located in the urban renewal area, our brand new one, and in order to do that, you have to do a request for proposal and have to put it out for bidding for that process. But we'd welcome any discussions beforehand, on any folks that are looking to do X, Y, or Z on the building.
Thank you. When I get back to town, I'll follow up with the folks in Clinton at the western portion and the folks in Kansas City on the eastern portion.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lauber.
So when you are, I don't need it that much.
No, it's for the recording.
So when you're looking at this for new developers, are you offering them the incentive of no property tax for so many years?
No, so that's part of okay, so let me back up real quick. That's a great question. I'm going to answer it in two parts. So the first part is, in the city of Clinton, we already have set pieces for tax abatement. So in this urban renewal area, if you're doing commercial, we already have 3 years, 100% abatement on any and all improvements. So say you renovated your place tomorrow, and you doubled the assessed value, but that double assessed value is all your improvements. You'd only pay on what was before you made those improvements. Does that make sense? So let's just say for this case, we do a minimum assessed value on this ground, right? Let's just say it's left as it looks right now. And let's just say for this argument today, it's $250,000, right? Because that's what our loan is, right? Just for that. So the developer comes in and they basically put, let's say, $6 million into it. So they would only be taxed for 3 years on $250,000. Make sense? Now, that's what exists today. If somebody comes in and say they want to do some apartments, we could actually work with them a development agreement and say, hey, we're going to actually spend $10 million. We're going to actually open a restaurant as well. We're going to put housing in as well, and we're going to spend even more money. Then we'd actually probably we would talk to the council to say, hey, could we actually increase the amount of tax incentives to make this happen? Because, like, for example, when we did the Wilson building in Lafayette, we haven't done Lafayette, we're working on a draft development agreement, the Wilson building. We said at the Wilson building is there a right amount of years to be able to give a tax abatement, to have a building that's sitting idle, to now have it operational? How do you put a price on that? Me personally, it's the council's decision. I can't put a price in that. It's priceless because I'd rather get it back having people use it, and then if we don't collect taxes for 10 years, I don't care because we have people now living there that are coming outside, they're using all the different amenities that are up and down the street. So does that answer your question?
Also, if there was somebody that wanted to develop it to the extent of what you said, part of the building's got to go because you don't have parking.
Yes and no. Yes and no. So part of the, and this is probably getting into your guys' other areas too, but in the planners, so I'm training to be a planner, so see how I do. So when we looked about this, I think we went through the Jacobs building and the Y several years ago, I think with actually Dennis online there. But because as you can see right over the top of here, you can see that parking area and you can see the parking area right here. Basically how it works is as long as you're within a city block for parking, that would then qualify for those folks. Now, does anybody want to walk that far? Probably not. So we'd have to work that. You'd basically have to walk around the corner. You got to stop by the dentist first, get your teeth worked on, then go to the parking lot, and then you could use the new bathroom at Clinton Park, right? But the other thing is important. This is when we do a development agreement. This is what is very important. Is let's say, sir, your first name is Ray. Ray. Say Ray buys this and he's going to put $10 million into it. Well, in the development agreement, it's going to lay that all out. If Ray doesn't do that, then the city comes back and takes the property back. And why? This is another reason we go after properties. Why? How many properties have sold in the downtown and then nothing was ever done? Okay? So this is why we grab the property and say, and actually it's you guys, citizens, we're just representing you. It's the citizens that grab the property, right? Because we don't want to see it. We don't want to see it go into any further deterioration. We want to see that. So the development agreement is going to be a very good tool for the council to ensure, A, it's the right reuse, B, it's the right investment that we want to see, and then C, holding them accountable if they don't actually follow through on those things. So, and now I'll be followed by Mr. Jensen. He's going to talk about walkability. Gotcha. Oh, yes, Mr. Bob. There's a signage.
On the historic side.
Here you go. You got to hold this and talk in the mic.
Okay,
Pretend you're on Johnny Carson.
okay, the old building. Now this core building, this brick, that's called core building, will come out. There was a freeze up, I don't know from the other photo, but that skirt would probably have to be removed.
Wasn't this added later, Bob?
Yes, that was later, it's a metal, but there's brick under there. Now, when they added this on, you see this core build edge.
Yep.
I don't know if there's prints of how they did that, but I'm sure they had to remove brick and trim from there, so that poses a problem if we have to put it, if we want to tear all
This
that.
right here was added.
I know, but I mean, if there's
What
a,
you're talking about, this was
yeah,
always
yeah,
back.
but I think something, I don't know if the drawing, if all that was chiseled away and taken out, because if that's removed, then that's going to have to replace to be historically accurate. But, you got all this amenities, pools and stuff, and of course, if there's people living there, that's a plus for that, and thank God they matched the color of it to go with that, but it'd be a shame to tear it all down if it could be used, but if they had to take this off and maybe have just if they just made a walkway over, I mean, if we had to do all, in order to get our historic crack status, but I think there's a drawing of what that looked like, but that should definitely have to go.
I might ask those historic preservation folks if they have the old drawings. So the other big thing too is that when we just worked, and we're getting ready to submit a request for about $1.3 million for facades. Actually, 8 of the buildings are in the downtown right here, right? So, but one of those big pieces is on adding to that is looking at the historical preservation of the building, right? And there's a lot of tuck pointing we've been talking about, and then making sure it falls into SHPO. But there was something else I was going to say on that is, so at the end of the day, we're still collecting up information, collecting up data. We've not decided on anything. That's why you guys are here. So I know you said don't tear down. We're not talking about that. We're looking at what is the best reuse for this, for that. Oh, I know what I was going to say. In the facades, one of the biggest things we added was ADA accessibility, right? Because right now that building is not ADA accessible. So that's all something that we're going to take into consideration when we say how do we make that then, whatever reuse it is, to make sure that everybody can get in and out of there properly, et cetera. We also talked a lot about elevator use, because let's just hypothetically say it becomes apartments. Well, you don't want to have an elevator that's used by everybody. You want to have a private elevator that can get you up and down to your floors and get you into the common area, et cetera, et cetera. So, anyway. Yes, sir.
There's 3 vacant, as soon as I the funeral home and house, so you know, maybe them people, if there's room for parking there, God forbid they have a shared room system.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought one owner's a tough nut to crack, though. It'd be tough to get some property from him. Yeah, two of them. Yeah. Yes. And we even talked about, because they had asked, the team here had asked, what's that little walkway thing that goes across there? And that was when it used to go to the tennis court. So, yeah. So, yes, sir.
All right.
Can you get through there, Mike's please?
All right. Hello, I'm Dr. Steer. I'm the one that does own Gateway Dental. So my building sits right across the alley on the eastern part of the building here.
Right above the alley, right nearest you.
Nope, keep going.
Keep going up, right there.
Yes, right there. So what my understanding is on the eastern part, it looks like it's going to try to be saved off the historical part when some type of a redevelopment with that. All right, so basically when we see that every day, my patients are in, they're asking what's going on with the Y. It's an eyesore. We know what the violence has been through the squatters and things and what the city's had to do to maintain that. I will say when the Victory Center did have it, on the eastern side of the building, there was a stairwell that the gentleman would sit outside along street side. Yes. Yes, and they did provide some safety in the area that they kept it out. They were always watching. So they were good neighbors at the time when they were in the building for it. If you're looking, I guess when I'm looking at this building, and you're going to say that on any redevelopment, definitely the parking issue is kind of a problem. Yes, I know that we have patients and that I park in the parking lot to the north, and that's fine, but I think most developers are going to want to have something immediately right there. And I guess part of the other question is too, is once you got a developer in there, do they have grant money? Is there federal money, state money for them to develop on what they want to do?
I'll answer that one first.
Okay.
So basically, on that, let me give you an example of like the Wilson building itself. It was 11 different funding mechanisms that reached the $13.5 million that they're going to renovate. So I would suspect the developers that we may have engaged with, that we know, just to get the juices flowing, they would come and looking at market rate tax credits, which is basically for luxurious apartments. They would be looking at federal historical credits. They'd be looking at whatever, like as Celeste mentioned, what is the tax incentives that exist, and could there be a development agreement for that? So as you guys know, with everything on in the world, everything else has cost more money, so it's very difficult, but it's still feasible for that. And as Bob and Michael and actually Greg, as our historians, will tell you, is to bring some of that stuff back that SHIP was going to make them do costs more money. It's not just like putting, Anderson windows in, which are great windows, but you may have to do other things to make sure that it still abides by the historical nature of it. So there's many more that we go into, but they're always looking for dollars to be able to help them out. Like for example, the Wilson building, we helped them with Miss Karen with a $500,000 facade to just another layer of stuff that goes into how they can finance it. And we're doing something similar for Lafayette, which we can hopefully help them close by adding them to the facade roster as well. So any and all, there's also different federal USDA rural grants and loans that they could leverage for small businesses. Same thing that they're looking to do, like as in the incubator space below the Wilson building that will open up in August timeframe. There's going to be 5 kitchen areas in the Wilson building and 5 business spaces for entrepreneurs. And the goal there is they start kicking some butt. They basically then can go spread out and then open up a business in a bigger area in downtown. Because for Celeste, we want to have like 10 restaurants. And everybody starts at Celeste and finishes there. But no, one of my things I always like to, very seriously though, is how many people when they go buy a car just go to one place? Because you still have 311,000 miles on your car. She's at 312. But joking aside is typically when people go, they're going to go to an area that has a lot of car places, because if they're not, stuck to a certain brand, that way they can go see all the car lots and check them out. Same thing is, why do you think when you go into bigger cities, all the restaurants are in the same area? You know, so you go and then you, oh, hey, we went to this the other night, let's go to this one, right? Or, you know, every day we could go to Corner Deli, but for dinner, we could go to a different restaurant, right? So the point being is, if you look at across the board, and these guys are waiting for SWOT analysis, I know, and I'm talking too long, is if you look across the board, one of the key things is for successful downtowns is lots of people living there that work, and then also having at least 10 restaurants or 5 type of nighttime things with wine and beer that are open after 6 p.m. Why? Well, because you get home after this meeting and say we all live downtown and we get home after we do this awesome SWOT analysis and we're going to be hungry. So where do you go? And what better way just to walk outside and then go over to the restaurant or go over to the brew pub to be able to do that? Is there other questions? I know these guys want to get the SWOT. You've got a question building somewhere in there.
I have input, not so much a question.
You best dressed man tonight too.
I'm Brent Moore. I grew up here in Clinton, and I heard about what you guys want to do to try and find something. I'm going to make it short. So when I was growing up, there was very few things that resonated with me as a child. Some sexual trauma, physical abuse, but one thing that stuck with me the most is that Miss Witt actually did the teen club program down at the Y down there. And I feel like that would be a very good solution to what to do with the Y. One thing that the paper obviously shows is that one thing we're concerned about is lowering crime. One thing that we can take from Iceland and looking at their system is they invest a lot of money into different social programs for the youth to keep them off the streets, to keep them off of drugs. Where I'm going with this basically is why I feel like that would probably be the best option is because it starts in a community, it starts with our kids. You know what I'm saying? If they're out here doing whatever, mischievous things, they're less likely to go to college. They're less likely to succeed in life. They're more likely to end up in the penitentiary or the correctional facilities. So yeah, that would be my input on it.
No, that's
so.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And you do look sharp. You do look sharp today, sir. All right. You want to talk to him?
Well, I was going to say, to share more of your thoughts as far as input, we have this exercise that we would like to kind of go through in the next 5-10 minutes here. If each of you want to complete one of these, it's basically we're asking you to put down things that you want to maintain or enhance about the property, things, problems that you want to address, whether it be safety or lighting, parking, that you'd like to address about the property, what you envision at the property, and then any constraints or issues you think that might be incurred in developing the site. If you can outline ideas. We're going to gather all this information back and incorporate it in our plans. This feedback is going to be very critical to the plan. So.
Ray. Sir, yes, sir.
Hi. I guess I could say I'm very happy that the city has taken over the YMCA, and I want to support whatever you want to do there, because to me, when I came to the community in 1962 looking for a teaching job, the first place I came to was the YMCA, and I was very impressed about how happy and how excited kids of all ages, adults, everybody was, and it really influenced me to stay in Clinton for quite a few years, since 1963. And I was on the board of directors at the Y when the last building was built, and I can just say that there were a lot of people in this community that said yes, yes. And I can remember Reynold Jorgensen going someplace out in Indiana and coming back to the board and saying, well, I just got $24,000. And, I guess I'm saying that as a young person in this community, what is going to keep a young person in this community? There's got to be some sort of recreation. I have always been involved in physical sports, not good. I mean, people look at me and think I'm going to be some big basketball player, but I'm not. But I just enjoy being physical. And I started playing handball and racquetball there in those courts. And as soon as it closed, well, of course, the YW took over, but the YW is completely programmed. And they sent us to DeWitt. I'm still playing racquetball in DeWitt. And so, it's there's a group of us that play from Clinton. We go to DeWitt, and the YW pays for it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that the facility isn't being used here locally. And I just talked to a person today that was in the basketball league. And, he was 20s, 30s type person when he was in the basketball league. And he said that he had to park way over here, well, I guess in your parking lot right here, or over on the north end parking lot, just to find a place to park. So I guess I'm at this right now. I guess I'm kind of disappointed that you're not looking at a recreation facility. The city of Clinton certainly has fantastic recreation facilities for the majority of the year, except when it comes to running track. That track up there that was running, there was a 20 laps per mile. There's two gymnasiums. One gymnasium had a ropes course where you climb around, and kids loved that. And the other one had it was basically volleyball, and there's lots of things going on in those swimming areas. And then the swim team. I mean, the swim team was quite well known here in Clinton, and the swim team had a lot of activities, and of course that fed right into Clinton High School, which made their swim team better. And so, I think that I'm here to say whatever the use that I'm thinking, it's not going to be something that's going to be a real bonanza to the community as far as money is concerned. There's other things to think about. And certainly, you mentioned the word play. That's where I'm at.
No, and Ray, I'm with you too. And I think one of the big things when we talk about that is, there's, as Chris alluded to, many plans that we've been doing. One of them is basically a master park plan. And then we just had Bray Architecture do a big study where it said, we're short on baseball fields, short on field houses, and then we really need to do something with a sports complex. So one of the city's focus is looking to see how could we actually add on to Erickson Center and have that indoor track, have that more courts available, because right now, Josh Agers as a director uses every single basketball court in town to run leagues, and you got to run all over, make sure you go. And they're very nice, and they're from the school. And I realize that, and I think one of the hardest parts is when we talk about dreaming of what this could be, is the reality of an investor putting money into it doesn't always equal maybe that play part, because you're not going to get the return on investment unless you can actually market it in the proper way, whether it be retail, restaurants, or apartments where you get your money back versus, because it's going to take a lot of dollars to bring it back to what we, yeah. But I'm with you.
Bettendorf is doing exactly what he's saying.
Yep, and it was $50 million private investor that.
I know, I just said.
No, I'm just saying.
There is other people thinking his way.
Nope.
And following through on him to keep him off the street.
Yep, no, we concur heartily.
Suggest go to Sterling, Illinois. Sterling, Illinois the population is less than the city of Clinton. It has a YW, a YM, it has a DeWitt Center, which is...
Yep, that's where all our kids are currently going to do volleyball and basketball tournaments.
The gymnastics.
Yep.
And then you go over to the West Lawn, you have an indoor track, you have all the rocket sports.
Yep.
These are things that you don't have in the city of Clinton, in the wintertime especially.
Yep. No, I'm with you.
Sorry.
No, you're all right.
Public
much all this gonna cost the city to tear that building down?
Nothing, we're not tearing anything.
I mean, if you do.
I wouldn't know, we'd have to have somebody come in and take a look. But you have to, yeah. Yep. I mean, we have buildings that, you know, we had the building across from Fourth Avenue Loft. That was $88,000 to tear that down. It was a tiny little Illinois Iowa building. So we got stuck with.
One other thing I want to say.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am.
One other thing I want to say. When they put that new building, when they put that new part up, they had two cranes. They had semi-bring pieces. They had pieces they flat on semi, too high. And then you cranes take them up in the air and set them up on the top of each other. That costs a lot of money.
Solid.
I want to make
Yeah.